What's at the end of the rainbow? Not a pot of gold, but apparently government tyranny and censorship. In Ireland, they are set to pass a new hate speech law that critics warn would be the most radical ever seen in the West. As cultural critic Nate Hochman noted on Twitter, the law criminalizes the mere possession of materials that are, quote, likely to incite violence or hatred. Books, videos, even memes on your phone.
Irish Prime Minister Leo Varadkar claimed the new law was necessary as the advent of social media marked new territory for hate speech that needed to be regulated. Take a listen.
In addition to that, I think it's now very obvious to anyone who might have doubted it that our incitement to hatred legislation is just not up to date. It's not up to date for the social media age, and we need that legislation through, and we need it through within a matter of weeks, because it's not just the platforms who have a responsibility here, and they do. There's also the individuals who post messages and images online that stir up hatred and violence, and we need to be able to use laws to go after them individually as well.
Other members of the government also tried to justify the need for new anti-hate speech laws. Senator Pauline O'Reilly acknowledged that the law would curtail freedom, but that it was for the common good. Let's watch.
When you think about it, all law, all legislation is about the restriction of freedom. That's exactly what we're doing here, is we are restricting freedom, but we're doing it for the common good. You will see throughout our Constitution, yes, you have rights, but they are restricted for the common good. Everything needs to be balanced. And if your views on other people's identities go to make their lives unsafe, insecure, and cause them such deep discomfort that they cannot live in peace, then I believe that it is our job as legislators to restrict those freedoms for the common good.
Very much saying the quiet part out loud there.
I mean, the issue is she's not wrong that every piece of legislation, every community decision about how we should run our lives is about restrictions. But the point isn't that the balancing test is always going to be there, and so we shouldn't question it. The question is, in this case, whether or not the balancing test is being weighed appropriately. Is the risk of taking away people's freedom of speech worth whatever kind of perceived benefit to public safety will accrue by policing what's on people's telephones? And what is the dividing line between having a meme on your phone that the government says speaks to a real danger that you present to the public and a thought crime?
Sure. And these aren't theoretical examples. I've written about, I've covered cases. I think when I testified before the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, I cited these cases in Britain of people being fined by the government for posting offensive rap lyrics on social media. That was one thing that happened. There was that famous case of this guy who made his dog do the Nazi salute to be funny or whatever, made a video of it, and he got in legal jeopardy for that. There's cases in Germany of some ancient Nazi lady getting hauled off to jail. Is this really making public safety?
Are they going to arrest Prince Harry for that Nazi costume that he wore in his youth?
Exactly.
Are they going to not arrest that little boy at the Kansas City Chiefs game with the Native American headdress on and the half black face? That
you have to believe we're going to be talking about that more at some point. This is, and in fact, what I'm sure you're worried about is that this is going to come after pro-Palestinian speech, as is happening everywhere in Europe. Crackdowns on speech become crackdowns on protest. And look, when they talk, so I'm looking at the law. So the BBC put out a piece that was very defensive of this law and noting all the, it says in the law, you'll still be able to debate and discuss issues regarding protected characteristics. You'll still be able to offend people. You cannot incite hatred or violence against others. You can be offensive, say things that make others uncomfortable, and have full and robust debate. But that woman was saying, again, she said, if it's about safety, you can't engage in violence. We don't need, that's already illegal. But when it goes to discomfort, she said discomfort, we're going to stop other people from feeling uncomfortable. And that is very, very worrisome because people's discomfort is subjective. And if you can use people's feelings to delegitimize your political expression, that would be very harmful. Now, of course, Ireland, like a lot of other countries in Europe, doesn't have the robust First Amendment protections we enjoy in the U.S. So it's not really a question of, if they try to do something like this in the U.S., you can bring a lawsuit. Our Supreme Court is very...
Well, Yes and no. I mean, part of my concern here.
Just to finish my point.
Sure.
In Europe, it is not as robustly protected legally as it is here in the U.S.
Sure, but again, these are slippery slopes. And what we experienced just in the last week was Elon Musk saying that the terms decolonization and from the river to the sea are no longer going to be allowed on the Twitter app. This is someone who's come out strongly against this Ireland law, but doesn't seem to see the parallels in the way that he's running one of the biggest, most important social media site, at least for journalists, in the entire world.
Yeah.
So, it's not just what's going on in Ireland that should be a concern in a kind of abstract way. We have conservatives banning whole categories of academic study at public universities, saying, I don't think that people should be learning about African American studies. You have book bans all across the country because these books are perceived to be inciting violence against white children. You have obviously these social media bans on terms that you can dispute what you think that the terms mean, but it is perfectly allowed to go on these apps and go on the mainstream news and say, I think that Palestinians, Hamas is committing a genocide, but not to say the same thing about Israel, as they've now killed 20,000 people in Gaza. And Elon Musk seems to be wanting to straddle this fence here, saying the Irish law is bad, but then turning around after going to Israel and meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu, saying, now we're going to ban terms like decolonization or from the river to the sea if it's pertaining to Israel.
So I think that was a big mistake. I think that obviously violates the free speech commitments Elon has said. Michael Schellenberger agreed with us when we had him on. He has faced pressure to do. I wish he would stand up to the pressure. He's not standing up to the pressure. He's faced tremendous pressure to do it because of these hate speech organizations like the ADL and Media Matters. And so this is a good example how bad faith concerns about hate speech and incivility and discomfort in society are used to attack legitimate political expression. And you're right, I wish he wouldn't make that decision. But it's exactly this kind of thing, exactly this kind of reason that we ought to resist the push that Ireland is doing. And obviously, there are hate speech. So there are hate crime. In the U.S., there are hate crime statutes. So you can't be charged for being hateful. That's not a crime. But if you commit a crime and then it is shown to be because of prejudice against a protected class, you can be charged with an enhanced sentence. And a lot of civil liberties-minded folks, myself included, are not particularly comfortable with that set of laws, but they've stood up so far. I think, crime is crime, and then you can still weigh, like a judge and jury can decide it's even more heinous for whatever reason, or because you had malice. But to have it structured on the books, to me is not great. But that's a different conversation.
I have some discomfort with it too, but I think it is worth noting that I think part of the impetus for those kinds of laws was that if you look statistically at the sentences that people were getting for, say, killing a white person versus killing a black person, regardless of the race of the perpetrator, that when you kill black people, you get lower sentences, people don't care as much, juries don't punish you as much. And we've seen there's similar laws that say if you kill a judge, if you target a judge, let's say because you're a defendant in a case, that you have a higher penalty, and it's the point is to have deterrence. So if you have observable patterns where you think that there's not enough deterrence effect because the juries aren't sentencing as high as they would for a different kind of victim, or because people are more vulnerable. Let's say a judge who oversees all these criminal cases is more vulnerable because they are making decisions that are bad for mobsters and the like, then you want to protect them more. I think that there is rationality to that, whether or not it is necessary if there is at least a baseline kind of sentence for people. This is a conversation people are having, obviously, about the 3 Palestinian kids who were shot in Vermont recently. We don't know as much as we will eventually about the facts leading up to their killing, but there is a debate right now, is it a hate crime, is it not? I would like to think that the penalty that you get for attempting to murder 3 people
should be so steep,
high
I don't even care.
that it has a deterrent effect regardless.
And you would probably agree with this. Taking sentencing broadly speaking, I hear what you're saying about incidences where people were, juries were not going back. Juries would not convict, white people for crimes against black people, that kind of thing. However, broadly speaking, taking sentencing out of the hands of judges and juries and having them just like de facto in the law has led toward over-incarceration, and also has taken away people's rights to actually meaningfully defend themselves because the sentences are the mandated sentences are so high, people don't want to risk trials and just plead guilty, and that's why you don't have, and then are kind of deprived of meaningful due process.
Yeah, I hear that. But mandatory sentencing and elevated sentencing,
sure,
are a little bit different issues. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. All right. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. More Rising right after this.